Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm Go Local News Editor Kate Nagel. I'm joined with a familiar face. He has been here. Last time you were here, I believe you were declaring your candidacy for governor.
I was and I did.
Paul Roselli, a familiar face.
Yeah.
He's still running because he's not just running around Rhode Island, he is running around outside Rhode Island, has been an outspoken opponent to the Invenergy proposal in Barville, but last night was in Fall River, and this has to do with the water supply that they are proposing to make this power plant happen. As folks have seen, and we'll talk a little bit about the tribe's role,
Sure.
Fall River sort of entered the fray a few weeks back
Sure.
about being that backup source of water, but tell us about what you encountered in Fall River last night.
So it keeps on getting curiouser and curiouser, and I think Invenergy is doing some Hail Marys, whether they're trying to score a touchdown or just praying. I'm not really sure which one they're doing. But what happened in Fall River last night was the latest saga of playing water tag, of trying to find a water source for this fracked gas power plant proposed for the middle of the woods in northwestern corner of Rhode Island. So here's what happened last night, and here's the most salient outcome of what happened last night. The city council there, up until about 2 days ago, I think it was Tuesday, or maybe even Monday evening, didn't know that this water contract had actually taken place. They had no clue that the Watuba Water Supply Board actually made a contract, along with the mayor of Fall River, had written up a contract and submitted it to Invenergy, along with a company called Ben Water. And Ben Water will be the principal delivery agent.
So nobody on the city council?
Nobody on the city council knew about this until just about 2 days ago. It was brought to their attention by some local news folks here in Rhode Island, and they in turn were outraged. The city council was outraged, and that came to a head last night at a public what turned out to be was supposed to be a very short public hearing.
It was not at all.
Not at all, but it turned to a 3-hour marathon for public comments by a host of people, not only from the town of Burrowville, but from Providence, Cranston, and particularly Fall River. Fall River residents were outraged that somebody was about to sell water to a fracked gas-fired power plant. And we got to remember one really important thing that also took place last night was that the mayor, in an article a couple of days ago, talked about the craziness in Rhode Island that's going on. That's a direct quote.
But the craziness,
the craziness.
In which sense?
The craziness in Rhode Island that's going on with the Invenergy power plant. How it was absurd to think that there was going to be some environmental damage as it relates or in regards to the sale of water from Fall River to Invenergy.
And we're talking multiple trucks on the road. And talk with us a little bit about that, because I've seen you've put the numbers out
Sure,
there as to what this
sure.
could look like. It would be a proposed backup source. So how does that work? Because I was going to segue into the Narragansett tribe, which we're still not, at this juncture, assured that that is the primary source.
Yeah.
So if it's backup, how would that even work? And did they even explain it in Fall River?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that came up a lot yesterday. Why should even Fall River care? It's could be anywhere between 11,000 gallons and 88,000 gallons of water. And if you divide it by a truck which holds 8,000 gallons of water per truck, you get anywhere from 1 to 2 to maybe 10 or 11 per day. Where the rubber meets the road, and that's not just a metaphor, but where those numbers start to dissolve is in two things: the time of day, because it's a concentrated time of day. They're not allowed to go at night. According to the contract, if you read the contract, the trucks aren't allowed to go at night.
Now, why is that? You would hope that they would go at the least amount of traffic. And what is even the route from Fall River to Burrowville?
Yeah,
is it 195 and take a hook at 146?
Pretty much.
That's a lot of traffic at certain times of day in that area.
That's a lot of traffic during certain times of day. No one talked about school systems. There are two schools, a primary school and a middle school, that are on that route, very close to where the water might go. But here's the reality, and we talked about this both on Tuesday with a couple of councilmen privately as well as publicly during the city council meeting last night. The number of trucks is a misnomer. We can't talk about the number of trucks. We have to look at the overall project. The overall project is an environmental disaster for a place that doesn't need an environmental disaster. This is one of the last remaining forests in the state of Rhode Island, contiguous forest. This power plant is smack in the middle of nearly 17,000 acres of preserved property. Your tax dollars, my tax dollars, helped purchase some of that property. The Burrillville Land Trust, which I'm a member of and the president of, purchased some of that property, which surrounds the proposed power plant. That's the issue here, that Fall River, by way of the Watuba Water Board, can be complicit in causing a environmental disaster with fracked gas and supplying water to a place that where this environmental disaster just doesn't need it. We don't. First of all, we don't need the power plant, and certainly if we did need it, which we don't, this is the last place you would ever put a power plant. So that's paramount. That's more important than the number of trucks. The number of trucks could vary, and according to this contract, it could be anywhere from 1 to 2 to 11 to 12. Nobody's counting truck trips though, because trucks just don't go one way, they come back.
They come back.
They come back.
So we know this fight quite well here in Rhode Island. We've covered it extensively. Saw you at Barville High School just the other week, the
Sure.
packed auditorium. But what was the reaction like in Fall River last night, and where do things currently stand? You have a resolution that a council member.
I do.
So people came last night, they came out in force. Where do things currently stand with Fall River?
Yeah, good question. So what was telling about last night was the overwhelming opposition of city residents. Not one city resident spoke in favor of the water deal. Not one city council person spoke in favor of the water deal. In the wee hours, about 1:15 this morning, a.m. that is, 1:15 a.m., the city council came up with a resolution.
At 1:15?
At 1:15 a.m. This is a meeting that usually starts around 7 and ends around 10 or 11 o'clock. So again, a 3-hour, and that was because they allowed public comment to keep going. And we, anybody in the opposition, no matter where you're from, all over the state, all over the region, appreciates the City Council of Fall River for allowing that public testimony.
So they allowed for the public testimony, and so it ended at a certain time, so you get the impression that they then convened to come up with this. And can you explain a little bit more about the resolution?
I'm going to read the last part of it, which I think is telling, because the number of trucks never entered into it. Here it is. They want to ensure that the city of Fall River will not be a co-defendant in any litigation, and to assure this council that through the contract, the city of Fall River will not be environmentally or economically responsible in any way for providing water of what may be an environmentally damaging activity in the nearby state of Rhode Island. That's what they said. So they took the truck equation just out of the picture. They took that and looked at the environmental damage that could result from this power plant.
You say this is the council. Is this the entirety of the council, several council members? Who put forth this resolution?
Yeah, that part I'm not sure. It lasted till about 1:50.
There is sentiment in the council,
Yes.
at least by some parties, that have viewed this as potentially, again, environmentally impacting.
From what I understand, it was a unanimous decision because they were, and I won't use the colloquial expression here, but they were reasonably upset as to discovering that their water could be used for something that could cause environmental damage. One of the reasons they came back and said that and wrote this resolution is that not too long ago, the state of Rhode Island, and Save the Bay in particular, helped them stop the LNG tank that was coming to Fall River. They also were instrumental in moving Brayton Point to believing and to understanding that they're no longer economically viable in the 21st century. So Rhode Island's helped Fall River tremendously over these years, and they were reasonably upset, and I'll use that. They were reasonably upset not being notified about this water deal, and with the possibility of causing some environmental damage.
So they put forth a resolution. Is kind of is it out of the gate in Fall River? Is there any way that Fall River can stop this at this juncture, or because the water source with Ben Water entered into this agreement, is it a fait accompli?
Yeah. So as part of this resolution too, they're calling for a public hearing.
Okay.
So the public hearing will actually they've invited town of Burrillville town council members, they've invited Invenergy, they've invited Ben Water, and they've invited a whole host of other organizations to come and speak about this water deal. Their issue, and I've got to stress this over and over, and we've been thinking more and more about this all day today as a result of what happened last night, was that their impression was that they don't want to be responsible for environmental damage. That's it. That's the bottom line here. They don't want to be complicit in anything. They don't want to have anything come back to them, both in economically, tourist dollars, and also they don't want to give the impression that they are the ones who helped move this power plant along. And that was evident both in the public hearing during the beginning of the meeting, about 4 hours later when they actually got to talk with the Watuba Water Board, and when the resolution came up. So they're strong against this.
So that's Fall River, and we had a conversation, Paul, before you came here into the studio about the primary source, about the sort of agreement as it stands right now with the Narragansett tribe. You've got some thoughts about how that arrangement looks right now, and you think that there might be some holes in it.
Yeah, so the holes are going to come from the Narragansett Indians themselves. They have not had an opportunity to, according to what they've been telling us, to elect their true leaders. The current leaders are on their way out. There is an election coming up. I keep on hearing that the end of October, which is right around the corner, is coming up. They've also filed, as you know, a motion to intervene at the Energy Facility Siting Board. That's a big deal. That is a really big deal, because what happened there was that the tribal members, from what we understand, all voted in favor of pushing that motion forward. So that was a really big deal. They're starting to unify. They're at a place where we were about a year and a half ago, trying to find common ground, common sense in all of this, and trying to make sense of all of it, and then take action. The key player here is, and we talked about this earlier, is the town of Charleston. They have filed for a motion to intervene. They got approved to intervene. There's going to be a public hearing in the town of Charleston. The dates were announced a few days ago. I think maybe even today the dates for the public hearing were announced. That's a huge opportunity for the town of Charleston to weigh in on not only the power plant, but the delivery of water. And we got to remember, they're only one of 10 towns associated with this sole source aquifer that's in the town of Charleston, in that area. What we're hoping and what we're working towards is to get as many towns as we can to also file as interveners in the FSB process, because they're going to be impacted as well.
Is the filing as an intervener sort of the step that might have some teeth to it? One of the things we saw following the hearing at Barville High School was basically the siting board saying, we're not taking in those town council resolutions opposed to it. So we saw them step back, and we saw a lot of reaction to that, saying, again, this is statewide. But is, again, the intervener status have, again, potentially more teeth in this fight?
Yeah, it does. It gives them a seat at the table. They can, and in this case in the town of Charleston, and we suspect that if the Narragansett Indians win their motion as well, they'll have a public hearing. They have to have a public hearing in the town that has intervener status. They also are allowed to bring expert witnesses. They're allowed to cross-examine existing witnesses. They're allowed to have that teeth. And they're also allowed to make public statements. And that's what's really important here. The town resolutions, as good as they are and as heartfelt as they are, they weren't considered as evidence. Here, the town of Charleston can provide evidence and then speak about that evidence now from a seat of authority. And that's what we expect them to do. Because just like the city of Fall River, they are reasonably upset about their sole source aquifer being used as a primary water source to power a power plant.
So you've been such an activist on the issue, and it's what we've had you in here before on. But of course, declaring for governor might change your life up a little bit.
Yeah,
Since declaring, I mean, how have things changed, especially with conversations with folks? Talk with me about what they say. Okay, Paul, we know how you stand on Invenergy, but what do folks want to hear from you now when you have these conversations across the state?
Yeah. So the question always is, so what else you got for us? So what else is there?
Well, let's start with the paw socks.
Well, maybe we should start and end with the paw socks, because that's indicative of what else is going on in the state. And the power plant is another example of that. And the Bennies, the closing of Memorial Hospital, where should we go?
I'm going to start with the paw socks. How have you found this process
Sure.
to be playing out, especially this fall?
Yeah.
We've had Senate hearings, we've had House hearings.
Yeah.
Right now, it's for legislation that would allow legislators to decide, but we've heard from the Speaker of the House, we've even heard from the Governor, might be some potential, should it go to the voters?
It should go to the voters, absolutely should go to the voters. It's your money that's being paid for this. It's our money, it's your money, my money, that's being paid for this. Also, the way the contract is written, the way the law is written, it'll be in the budget. Whatever remains from that debt is going to be in the budget for the next 20 years or so. So we're going to be paying that debt. Our own treasurer, Seth Magaziner, came out and said, gee, maybe it wouldn't be so good an idea to have the city of Pawtucket finance this, because their bond rating is lower than either the state or another town or city. Perhaps maybe the state should pick up the bill for this and save all of us millions of dollars. That's where good management comes into play. And when our governor and some of our legislative leaders come out and say that they're going to support a power plant or support a public financing of a multi-million-dollar stadium and give money to billionaires, that's some of the key issues I'm facing and hearing from people I'm talking about me running as a candidate for governor. And that's what I'm at. That's what I'm looking at. Those are the issues. Concerning let me state emphatically about the ballpark. It's time to stop public financing of these kind of things when there are other ways to do it. I mean, if this is such a good deal for everybody, issue some kind of an IPO. Let's buy some bonds or take some stock in it. I might actually give $100 and buy some stock in the ballpark. For you out there who are listening and watching, how many of you have been to how many ball games have you been to?
A smattering, I would say.
A smattering, okay. Is that enough to sustain a couple of $100 million over the course of 20, 30 years? I'm not sure. Are there other things we can do? Infrastructure things, absolutely. The state should spend money, should help towns and cities with infrastructure things. Ballparks, not quite, doesn't seem like a good deal to me at this point.
So here we are today. Last week, Go Local released its poll findings for its benchmark poll with John Della Volpe from up at Harvard. Thursday, we focused on the big picture. Friday, we focused on elected officials. But those big picture issues of more Rhode Islanders saying the state's on the wrong track than the right track. More Rhode Islanders saying that their financial situation either hasn't changed or gotten worse in the last 3 years. I mean, how concerning are these numbers when you saw them in the polls?
Yeah, they're very concerning. And I think what has to first start is we need inspirational leaders. We need leaders with vision. We need a governor who not only has a vision on paper, but articulates that vision in a way that we can all understand. Our governor has stated over and over again how the press has been her enemy. Let me tell you, the press can be your enemy and your friend only if you're able to articulate that kind of message that will get people to hear you and listen to what you're trying to say. I think I can provide a more articulate way of looking at the state and particularly some of the municipalities and cities throughout our state. They're as different as Burrillville and Block Island. They're as different as Woonsocket and Westerly. What holds us together, what binds us together is our love of our environment, love of our city, love of our rich history here. That's what we should be touting. When it comes to climate change, and I don't mind talking about that as a central issue, because climate change will affect both the economy, the tourist industry, and our way of life. And if we don't deal with it now in a unified, a bold way, we're going to be paying for it. Maybe not next year, but certainly within the next time period. Pick a time period.
And children
3 to
and
5,
grandchildren.
20 years, whatever it is. And that's our future. And if we don't do something in a bold way, and what I mean by a bold way, let's stop producing electricity using fossil fuels. Period. That's it. And we need a leader, we need a governor, we need a legislature to come out and say that, and to make that happen through legislation. We need to upgrade our grid. We need to, we conducted we did an energy forum in Cranston last night. The biggest problem was the biggest issue was not so much the amount of increase in rates. Those are going to go up. But how can we be more efficient? There's an opportunity here. That's what we need leaders to do. That's what we need our governor to do, to start articulating how we can be first. We can be first in street lighting. We can be first in energy efficiency. How about first in electric motors? How about first in electric motors for ferries and small transportation vehicles? How about first in a variety of things? That's what I bring to the table. That are not only the articulation, but the vision to make that happen.
So this energy efficiency forum in Cranston, was it scheduled to coincide with the mayor's gubernatorial announcement?
Yeah, it was not. No, it just happened. And Alan Fung, I've met Alan a couple of times, and I wish him well on his journey. I hope to face him in the next fall sometime. But one step at a time.
Democratic primary. Again, you were in Fall River last night,
Right.
Continuing to fight the Invenergy fight, running for a statewide office. What's next? Will we see Paul Roselli in the coming weeks?
Yeah. Next coming weeks, I'm going to articulate just where I stand on a couple of issues, particularly the ballpark. Also, I'm going to make a more public announcement. It was nice doing it on Go Local Live.
But the official.
Maybe the second or third official. I seem every once a month to be announcing that I'm running, which is fine. But we need to do something a little more public and a little more efficient.
So last question for you. The last election season for the gubernatorial candidates, we saw Bob Healy. Did he say, was it $23 he spent or $29 that he spent?
It was something.
Is fundraising going to need to be a component of your campaign, or are you going to be more focused on the grassroots messaging side of things?
Yeah, both. The grassroots messaging, the strategy is to get people out to vote. The key here is to get people out to vote. No matter what persuasion you're on, no matter what political issues you're facing, you've got to get out and vote. And I think if we can get the progressives, the Our Revolution folks, the Democrats, the disgruntled Republicans, all the independents, all those who are unaffiliated, if you can get out and vote in that primary, you'll make a statement. And that's the statement that I want to leave with you today. Get out and vote. Start, as Michael Moore says at the end of his play in New York City, get out there and do something. So here's what you can do. Start planning to vote. Circle that date on your calendar in September and come out and vote, and hopefully you'll vote for me.
Well, I appreciate your coming in today, again, to give us a little bit of an overview of what was happening with Fall River, but as well as your gubernatorial campaign. So,
Thank
Paul, we will have you back in soon. I'll let you around the corner.
Okay. Thanks.
Paul Roselli, again, activist against the Invenergy power plant in Barville. We've had him in here before. Last time he was in talking about running for governor as a Democratic candidate. But wanted him to come to the studio today after what took place in Fall River last night, talking about their role in the water supply for Invenergy. And next steps, we have seen that the siting board said that they were not going to take, and they are not going to take, the town council resolutions being opposed to this, but talking about the town of Charleston and how the folks in the towns that are surrounding, again, this water source that would supply this for the Invenergy power plant are potentially going to be playing a pivotal role moving forward. So we're going to keep an eye on that here at Go Local. So we appreciate you tuning in today for the Taste at 3 o'clock. It was Great Restaurants in East Greenwich with Rick Simone, who also had someone out in California impacted again by the wildfires out there, Napa Valley. What you can do to help these wineries that have been impacted by this natural disaster. So it's always a great combination when we can have folks here in studio, but then bring folks from around the country and the world right here to you. And then we had Ray Lavoie talking with us at the 4 o'clock hour about healthcare and his role specifically with the Blackstone Valley Healthcare Centers, again, in light of the collapse of Memorial Hospital, what might be taking place with Care New England. They are focused, again, serving the needs of tens of thousands, 18,000 folks in the Central Falls area, but mentioned, again, that With additional healthcare centers around the state, this new model, this healthcare station for preventative healthcare, he believes, former Director of Health Dr. Michael Fine believes, could be the new future of the healthcare model here in the state. And of course, Paul Roselli, who we appreciate coming in to talk with us here in studio. We'll be back with you tomorrow here at the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center, 3 o'clock, Molly O'Brien. I'll be back with you at 4. Ray Rickman, Bob Whitcomb, our stalwarts at Thursday. Always good to have them here in studio. So we appreciate your tuning in. Appreciate you watching. If you're out there, be safe. It's rainy today, a little rainy tomorrow. Be sure to check in with Go Local online today and tomorrow, but we'll be back with you tomorrow afternoon. I'm Go Local News Editor Kate Nagel. Editor Kate Nagel. Editor Kate Nagel. Editor Kate Nagel.